and thank you to each of you for being here today. Ms. Morin, I am so sorry for your loss. I know that's been a very difficult time for you and your family, and this truly is a season of sorrow for you all, and I recognize that. I find it so interesting. This open border policy that we've seen is not a compassionate policy. I've talked to people that work with human trafficking and sex trafficking, and what is happening to women and children is abhorrent. And we all are fully aware of that. Mr. Chairman, I appreciated your remark that we should deport those that are truly a danger to Americans. I think that's accurate. I don't think there's anyone would disagree with that. We've all seen the uptick in violent crimes, such as Ms. Morin and her family have experienced. And this is the reason I reintroduced my CLEAR Act this year, which would enable local law enforcement, when they apprehend someone who's in the country illegally, to detain them and then call on ICE to deport them. And then the federal government have to repay that local law enforcement agency for what they've spent in that apprehension, that detention. And we should pass this bill today. And that would be a good thing for this committee to be doing this last week. Pull it up, put it on the hotline, and run it. Is there anybody on this panel that disagrees with deporting criminal illegal aliens? Raise your hand if you disagree with that. Everybody agrees those that have committed crimes against our citizens should be deported. Mr. Arthur, I want to come to you. Talk for just 1 minute about why it is important that we empower local law enforcement to carry out the job that the federal government has not done.
Well, you actually heard Mr. Reichlin-Melnick talk about how few ICE enforcement removal officers there are. There's always going to be a set number of those individuals. When you allow police officers who are involved in their community, who are the first line, actually putting hands on criminals, they're going to be the people who are best able to pull those individuals out of the community. It's important to note, Senator, that when you talk about immigrant crime, Ms. Morin's situation is horrible, and every crime is horrible. So much of that immigrant crime takes place in immigrant communities. Sanctuary jurisdictions do nothing but punish the immigrants that those individuals that live in those communities that those criminals are sent back to. So that's why it's absolutely crucial.
I appreciate that. So I think we should move forward with my legislation, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Reichlin-Melnick, I'd like to come to you. I want to talk about some of your tweets. You've been active on X. Here's one. This is bad analysis that bears little resemblance to the facts. The Remain in Mexico program was not very successful. It was a human rights disaster that fed people to the cartels with not much impact on border crossings. Plus, Biden ended it when it was barely in use at all. So
that's correct.
Let's talk about that. So do you still believe that Remain in Mexico was not very successful?
It wasn't. In fact, it was one of a suite of programs that went into effect in 2019, about 4 or 5 different ones over the course of about 8 months.
Do you believe it was a human rights disaster?
Yes, and I can tell you the stories of the women sent back by the United States to Mexico who were raped in Mexico because of that.
People that were raped along the way, people that have been
trafficked. And we sent them back to those traffickers. Remain in Mexico gave people to the cartels, and we turned our eyes away from them.
Remain in Mexico was successful, and we all know it. Now, let me talk to you about another tweet that you put up. There are not 320,000 missing children.
That's correct.
That number is a false interpretation of a DHS OIG report that said that 32,000 people who entered as unaccompanied children from 2019 to 2023 were ordered deported for missing court, and ICE failed to file charging documents for 291,000 more.
That's right. Now, that's an accurate description of the OIG report.
This is a human rights disaster because what we have heard is the DHS Inspector General, and what they have testified is that they found 32,000 migrant children did not show up for their court date, and an additional 291,000 migrant children never received notices to appear.
That's correct. That's what my tweet
So
said.
is it your testimony that DHS does in fact know the whereabouts of every single one of these 320,000 children, and they're just not telling people where these children are?
No, because that's not DHS's function here. It's also Office of Refugee Resettlement. It's
It is
not their job to
DHS
go out
and
and find every single
ORR.
people.
It is DHS and ORR.
I
And
guess the
what
broader
we
point is
know,
somebody isn't missing
sir,
if no one's looking for them.
What we know is that through reports that have been made, reporting even the New York Times, many of these children are in abusive situations. They are working in plants, and indeed, DHS says that you've got this 320,000 migrant children that cannot be located. That is a human rights disaster. I yield back.
Senator Blackburn, they did not say they can't be located. They said that they had not even attempted to file
My time has
charging
expired. I
documents,
yield
which
back,
is a very
Mr.
different
Chairman.
thing.
I'm going to give the witness an opportunity to finish his remarks.
I just want to know, the DHS report did not say these children were missing. It said that ICE had failed on the job to actually start the court process for them. If ICE filed the court documents, many of those people would be living at the exact address that the ICE told them. It's just ICE has not filed the charging documents. It's not that they're missing. And of course, exploitation is very real, and we've called for more labor enforcement to ensure it doesn't happen.
Senator Padilla?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the fact that we're still discussing, debating